Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. And the name of today's podcast is Maybe Everything is Okay, a parent's guide to less stress and worry. And the name of the podcast matches the book that I just released in paperback and Kindle. It was originally released by Tantor Audio in September 2024. And right now I'm actually working on my fourth book. I just got a book deal with Post Hill Press. But it has been such an amazing gift for me to be able to go back to this book and talk about it again. It is such a sweet book, and for anybody who struggles with uncertainty and you have children, I could almost guarantee you that it will alleviate some of your suffering. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about how all attachment leads to suffering. And so if you want to alleviate suffering, you have to be able to detach. And so a long time ago, I realized that on some level for my entire life, I would suffer because I'm attached to my children. And I'm sure if you're listening and you have children, you're attached as well. We need our children to be okay. But a long time ago, when I looked at this, I realized that, sure, some of my suffering is that I need my kids to be okay. But there was another piece that I suffered because I was addicted to certainty. I suffered because I was afraid that if things weren't going well for my children today, that means they couldn't get better in the future. And when you start to realize that, when your child's not doing well in school, or they're having problems with friends, or you're worried about their career, or worry about the environment, you worry about how they will be in the world. If you have a good relationship with uncertainty and you remember that uncertainty is your best friend, because if you want your life to change, it has to happen in the unknown. And if you want your children's life to change, it has to happen in the unknown future. And so when something happens with your child and you feel so desperate and stuck, when you remember that uncertainty has an unlimited field and life has maybe. Sure, maybe things won't go the way you want, but maybe they will. And you don't know what's going to happen next. And because you don't know what's going to happen next, your life has hope and your child's life has hope. And every time I go through something with my children, when I remember the maybe, when I remember the unknown, when I remember that things could turn out differently than I can even imagine, my mind settles. Because part of my aggravation in the moment is, yes, my child's upset. Yes, they're suffering. But part of my aggravation is it's never going to change and it's never going to get better. And when you realize you have no idea and you bring hope back in, you will settle. You will suffer less. And what's also amazing is not only will you suffer less, you will open up. Sometimes we make decisions for our children because we want certainty and we are afraid that their future won't be okay. But when you remember the maybe, and you remember life changes, and you remember there's an infinite field, you have a clear mind. And every decision you make for your children will not be from fear. It'll be from wisdom. It'll be from an open heart. And I can almost guarantee you that from that perspective, you will be more supportive, more loving, and you will be giving your child more opportunity to find their way. And now I'm going to read you an excerpt from the book called How Quickly Things Change. A good example of how our perception of what is happening in our children's lives is not always accurate, and of how quickly things change can be found with my client Debbie and her son Jack. Jack had a very busy high school schedule and was extremely involved with extracurricular activities. Jack entered a national science competition with his school and would be going away for a few days to the competition to present his project. The week leading up to the competition, Jack was anxious, stressed, and hardly slept. He also started to feel under the weather. My client Debbie was very aggravated and spent many hours that week helping Jack manage his emotions and supporting him through the final days of preparing his project. On the day he was going to leave, he texted Debbie several times from school that he was so nervous he was shaking. She received similar texts while he was on the bus traveling to the event, and then after he arrived at his destination, she heard nothing. He texted her that night and said things were good, and he sent her a picture of himself smiling. She heard very little from him the next 2 days, and then got a text on his way home that he had won an award. Jack came home happy and relaxed, while Debbie had a weekend of aggravation and sleepless nights worrying if Jack was okay. The next day, she approached Jack about how concerned she was about his emotional reactions in the days leading up to the competition. He responded, "Mom, you might not like how I handled the situation, but I handled it." She again tried to approach him about it. He turned to her again and said, "Mom, I handled it. I went and won an award. I also learned a lot about worrying for no reason. It is very unproductive." Then Debbie said, "But look how much worry you caused your mom and dad to just get you through it." He turned to her and replied, "Don't you always tell me to use my resources? You and Dad were my resources last week." Debbie told me at that point she had to smile. She thought to herself, nothing is fixed and everything changes. Debbie could not have ever imagined how well and wise her son Jack appeared that afternoon. Debbie said to me, "Imagine all the aggravation I could have saved myself if I stayed concerned, but in maybe." And what this idea of maybe does, it doesn't mean you're never going to worry, but it puts it in a much softer place. There's a difference between when your child's suffering in the moment and you believe it can't get better, and you look at that moment and you project a life of doom and misery for them, or you're sitting in the moment feeling pain that they're suffering, feeling sad that they're suffering, but at the same time in your heart carrying the hope of maybe, knowing that maybe things will change, maybe they'll get better, and maybe this is part of their journey. And as they grow and as they move forward, their wisdom will grow, their discernment will grow, and they will figure things out. And now I'm going to read you an exercise from this chapter. One of the easiest ways to practice the maybe mindset is to make maybe your mantra. A mantra is a phrase that you can repeat to yourself over and over to calm your mind or evoke other more desirable states of mind. When you embrace a maybe mantra, no matter how difficult your circumstances with your child, you will be amazed how the simple power of repetition can transform your circumstances. Keep the following mantra close to you, an expanded version of the single word, maybe everything is okay. Or if that seems too harsh, you could say, maybe everything will be okay. Depending on the situation you are facing, one mantra may give you more relief than another. Use these mantras or develop your own over time. Whatever your maybe mantra, write it down on a piece of paper or find another way to keep it handy. Some of my clients even use objects to remind them of their maybe mantra. They keep a small object on their desk or in their pocket to remind them that maybe is always by their side. Life with children can get busy and situations can threaten to overwhelm us. What makes maybe so easy to use that it does not require us to have all the answers for our children's success. It doesn't require us to identify the path that will solve their problems or other problems in the world. It just asks us to be aware that within the field of maybe, new possibilities are always arising that we and our children can access. When we have no idea what to do or what choice to make, our maybe mantra allows us to clear our minds and see over time the many possibilities flowering around us. And so try to remember, just like no one knows the future, you can't know if your fears are absolute. And that's why life has maybe. And for me, I always use maybe mantras, even to this day, when I get stressed and worry about a situation with my children. And most of the time, maybe everything's okay or maybe everything will be okay settles me. But there are other times when I could have other concerns. Maybe there will be a solution to this health problem in the near future. Maybe an answer is on its way. Maybe things will get better. Maybe there is reason to hope. And there's one other thing I want to add, that sometimes there's something going in our lives that we need some extra breath in the moment. And so the maybe mantra I use is, maybe there's something left for me and my child to experience in this moment. Because that's another thing that maybe does. It quiets your mind and it asks what's possible for the future and what is possible for now. Because we should never miss a moment, especially when we are with our children. I find even if it's just a hug or a walk or a song, the light and joy that they bring is always worth seeing and remembering. And of course, my favorite maybe mantra is maybe the best is yet to come. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my books, The Gift of Maybe, A Year Without Men, Maybe Everything's Okay, A Parent's Guide to Less Stress and Worry, they're available at all major bookstores and online retailers. If you'd like to buy my Maybe cards or my Maybe digital journal, you can find them on Amazon or Etsy or my Stan store. And most of all, if you like this podcast, I hope you subscribe and leave a comment.